So in my first video, I explained to you that Japan was not actually the destination. It was kind of just a stop in the journey. What was it that turned 1 year into very possibly the rest of my life? A lot of people come to Japan thinking it's gonna be this magical liberal wonderland, and I was kind of like that in the beginning too. But there's a lot of reasons to not like living in Japan. You have to get over a very significant amount of prejudice, and you know, the work culture, I'm sure you've all heard the rumors, and in many cases it's not quite as bad as people say. It can also be much worse. I've seen some very unfortunate situations through the expectation of, I know your contract says 40 hours a week, but what's 80 really? It's pretty much the same number, isn't it? And you know, your opportunities as a foreigner are very limited. So, you know, this isn't supposed to be a video about all the negatives of Japan. Let's get around this guy. That's a good way to start this out. One great thing about living in Japan is courtesy. That guy, hello sir. That guy was not in any sort of hurry. I'm on a motorbike. I'm looking to enjoy the twists and turns of Wakayama. And so he saw me turn on my blinker and he slowed down, or she, I don't actually know, I didn't look. But they slowed down for me to let me pass. And that's actually pretty common. Unlike the States where it's like, I'm going slow, but you can't pass me, so you better go slower. Driving in Japan, you get these pristine mountain roads everywhere you go, and they're not hard to find. Even a low quality road in Japan is still slightly above average compared to North America. It's better than a lot of European roads too. The only place I found with consistently better roads would probably be Norway. And here's another tunnel, so I guess I'll talk to you after we get out of this tunnel. And welcome back to the other side of a tunnel that my bike says was 600 meters long. And those are the times when I don't like the tunnels, because I would rather go through the mountains, but you know, it brought me out in a pretty great spot, didn't it? The next reason I would say I picked to live in Japan is the food. And again, I know you've heard this before, the ramen, the sushi, the takoyaki, the onigiri. It goes beyond the wonders of the food. It's the fact that I don't have to read a label. Like in the USA, you get your salad and, well, let's take a second and read the label, because that salad might have 100 grams of sugar. And even if it's a perfectly normal salad, you have to wonder what chemicals and modifications happened in the factory side of our farming. And for the most part, that's not a thing here. You know, the Japanese don't have an issue with sugar. It's just not, you know, like maple syrup levels of sugar in everything you eat. And you go to a convenience store in the West, and it's very often, with some exceptions, it's very often that you are going to get candy or chips or soda or, you know, those types of things. But a perfect example of the food quality here in Japan is something called Coke Plus. As far as I know, Coke Plus is special to Japan. And it's essentially take Coke Zero and add a little bit of fiber to it, which being the plus side of it. So yeah, you're still drinking Coca-Cola. I'm not gonna suggest this as a healthy alternative to something like water or natural orange juice. But the fact that that exists as their version of a soft drink is pretty impressive. The fact that you can get a healthy rice ball onigiri in every convenience store for about 100 yen, which is about $1 in the US. It's pretty good. Like, you choose to eat unhealthy or healthy, and you don't have to read a label to get there. You just kind of look at it and make a choice. The next thing would be the safety of it. Like, I remember a year and a half ago, I got the brand new 11-inch iPad Pro. Whenever I go to Starbucks or a cafe or anything, I have to go to the bathroom, just leave it there, open on the counter. No one is gonna take it. It's like, if I left it at a cafe, the worst case scenario is I have to remember what cafe I left it at and make time to go back the next day after work. And it'll very possibly be sitting right there on the table. If it's not sitting right there on the table, that's because someone picked it up and turned it in. And they have it. The staff has it in the back room. And they'll just bring it out to you. The idea of stealing is so absent from the Japanese culture. It's like, if you have something, it's of course that you worked hard and earned it. You just don't have those worries. There's the safety of that. And there's also the idea of, when you talk to, especially, in my experience, girls would say, can you imagine what it's like being a woman walking around in this town at night alone, and how scary that is? When I've been to LA, I wouldn't want to walk around alone. In Japan, you will see people after a night of hard drinking on the staircase of the train station or on the sidewalk sleeping. And no one's going to rob them, no one's going to do anything to them. And it might be a young, cute girl sleeping there. And someone might take her jacket and put it on her in a blanket-like way to make sure she stays warm. And this is extremely normal. And this is not to say Japan is devoid of crime. There is little petty crimes here and there. Like speeding is huge. The speed limits are typically very low, except on roads like this. See, brand new fresh road in the middle of nowhere. In Japan, this road has no speed limit, so it actually has no speed limit. It's don't drive recklessly. And then you see the white dotted lines, everywhere is a passing zone. So this is another just wonderful thing in Japan. I'm obviously not going too fast where anyone's gonna die, but I also am not looking at my speedometer. I'm just going with what feels comfortable, what feels safe. As a next point, not only do you trust the people, but you can pretty much trust the government, and the government trusts you. They're not watching you. Police won't speed because they're leading by example. But if you're on a 2-lane road and there's a cop going 40 in a 40, everyone's still going about 10 over or 20 over, and they'll pass. And the officer will not do anything. I don't have to be afraid of police here. I'm not saying all cops are dangerous. I'm not saying I'm afraid of all the police in the USA. What I am saying is, every time you drive past a police officer, you know that you're slamming on your brakes or you're downshifting, you're doing something. Even if you weren't speeding in the first place, you're gonna go properly under the speed limit. We just don't have to think about that here. We just live our best lives. If you see the list in front of me, I'm kind of skipping around as I ramble. So yeah, there's another nice quick one, is toilets. Just randomly around, you will find a toilet, and it's free. If you're European, you know why that's a big deal. And it's clean, which is a nice thing to have. Osaka is the one place with the worst infrastructure and the least clean in Japan, but that's by Japanese standards. It's still much cleaner than most European cities. It's cleaner than any American city I've ever been to. The next thing I would say is the helpfulness. Let's get around this gentleman. Everyone is relatively helpful. There are a few mean people. Like I said earlier, there's no shortage of racism here. On the whole, most people are quite compassionate to each other. The next big thing is organization. Everything, for the most part, is where it should be. Everyone's in their place. And it's not to say that it's a lack of freedom. When you get to the weekend, Japanese people can be absolute hooligans. You've never partied like this in the West. Another thing is, living in Osaka, and even having been through Tokyo, you don't have this massive city sprawl. If you've ever been to Dallas, is an unending city. It takes hours to cross Dallas, and the traffic's horrendous. Well, Japan's so organized with public transit and roads and highways. No matter what city you live in, you can get out in under an hour. And if you're from the country, you're an hour. That's crazy. But if you've ever lived in a big city, like New York City is a good example. You can get out of New York City in an hour. But what you get to when you leave New York City is smaller cities and smaller towns and more traffic and people commuting hours away. What you get in Japan when you get out of the city is this. I mean, it's amazing. You get to the end of a city and suddenly it's just a forest. It's a mountain. That's the amazing thing. The separation between nature and civilization is pretty good. And over 90% of Japanese people live in cities, which I find very convenient. And yeah, I guess that's an opinion. Some of you are thinking that's terrible, but you're not required to live in the city. Like, there are farmers, there's people living in the countryside. But yeah, so getting to the mountain roads, getting out to go riding or to go hiking or camping or something, that's really easy. And let's assume you're someone who, I don't know why you would be watching this channel, but let's assume you don't like nature, you don't like driving, you don't like getting out of the city. Well, the cities are so tightly put together that everything you need is very quick and conveniently there. For the most part, you can ride a bicycle everywhere. For the most part, there's a train that goes close enough to everything, and there's buses intermittently as well. The last thing on my list that I think I should bring up is a political thing. And it's not to say left, right, up, down, any of that, but it is to say that when you look towards the West, you see very unstable situations. You see a very serious distrust of political leaders. Everyone can agree both sides are liars, but this team's my liars, and I like their lie better. In Japan, you trust the leaders. And this is not to say that Japan is uncorrupt. There is corruption. It's not to say that there's not bad stuff going on. There is. Like, they genuinely censor history books. And there have been some very unfavorable things said about people who look like me when you look at the government. Just most foreigners often don't choose to learn Japanese or watch the news enough to see it. The government here is constantly doing what they think is best for the people. They are not necessarily just trying to win an election. You see very often abdications where Abe Shinzo stepped down last year for health reasons. You saw the emperor step down a bit before that. And it was because they figured, I think it's better for the next generation to take over. I think it's better for someone else to do this now. I am no longer the person to do this. Some people would say that as instability, but it's also more of an honor thing. Like, I'm not going to drive this country into the ground just to hold my seat in power. And they get more respect by not doing it. So that's the first part, is just that even if they do something that's not good, they truly did believe they were doing the right thing. They did it with the right intentions in mind. The other thing is trust. I keep saying this, but the government trusts the people. Nobody's following you, and you make mistakes. Like, if you forget to use your toll card one time and you accidentally slip through a toll, you don't get a ticket. You might get a letter in the mail explaining what happened, but there's not really a penalty. And if you get pulled over by the police, I've not been pulled over except one time where the cop explained that I was going to a closed road, so he was just helping me out. And then I asked him a few questions that I saw things happening, but driving school said not to happen. And he just explained, is that illegal? Maybe. No one's stopping you unless you're being dangerous. Japan's one country that said no to the US NSA surveillance. They said, no, we don't watch our people, we trust our people. And you really, really feel like that's true. There is an absolute trust that you're doing the right thing. It does lead to more people trusting each other, more people doing the right thing. It's not always selfish. You notice some people are doing the right thing not to help someone. they're doing the right thing because they don't want to be the one person who ruined it. And it's like, oh, that's the guy that ruined it for everyone. Like, traffic flows very good because everyone's trying to get out of each other's way. That's the biggest point that I would close on, is Japan excels quite significantly at the we over me. Japan is more, how can I help everyone? What's the best I can be for society? And that's a really refreshing thing. That's really shows. That's why they feel that it's their duty to only make good, high quality things, so that everybody, you bought my product, you deserve a high quality, reliable thing. So if they couldn't make reliable motorcycle cruise control, well, that's why they don't have it. And they don't want to charge you so much to make it worth it and say, well, you're just going to have to pay this much to get it. Now that things like cruise control are so affordable, a lot of more affordable bikes are coming with cruise as standard. Wow, that's just beautiful, isn't it? That's the perfect spot to say, this is why I'm in Japan.